Hi there, I'm Ed Balls. I'm Labour's Secretary of State for Children, Schools and Families. And I'm delighted to have the chance today to respond to all the postings we've had over the last 10 days on our website, since we went out with my email to ask you for your comments on our children's plan consultation. The last time I did one of these videos for the Labour Party on YouTube, I was doing it in my dingy office in the House of Commons with no windows at all. Today we're in a much brighter and lighter office here in the department, and it's great to have a chance to go through all these different postings we've had. We've had over 100 different comments come in from young people, from parents, from grandparents, from aunts and uncles, and I'll try and get through as many as I can. I can't do all of them, but I've got quite a good pile here and I'll get through as many as I can. By far the biggest number of postings we had was about faith schools, which probably isn't surprising because last Monday I was doing the launch of a document called Faith in the System, which we've drawn up in the department with all the faith leaders of all the different faith groups around the country over the last few months. And I had a number of emails from Mark, Matt, Marie, Sue, Craig, Susan, many others, expressing some support but also concern about these issues. And just to be clear, and I did say this last week at our press conference as well, I'm not proposing an expansion in the number of faith schools in our country. I think that should be for local communities to decide. If they can come forward with good proposals, we'll look at it. The point is that today there are already 1.7 million children in a third of all our secondary schools, over 6,500 schools, currently being educated in faith schools. And I need to work with those faith schools to make sure that they're delivering our objectives, to work with them to make sure that our new admissions code means admissions are fair and that schools aren't discriminating in favour of richer, better off children. I also need to work with faith schools and non-faith schools alike to make sure that our new requirement on schools to drive cohesive communities is actually taken forward in practice, a new power which Ofsted is also inspecting. And when I was with the faith school leaders last week, I challenged them to make sure that we deliver on those objectives: fair admissions, strong communities. I'm in a much better position to be able to take that forward by working with the faith leaders. That's the way to drive up standards, but also have strong communities for that third of schools around the country. If faith schools in the independent sector want to move into the state sector, we'll look at that favourably. And I said we would remove unnecessary obstacles to that happening. But those are decisions which are for local communities rather than for me to be making. We also had quite a few comments about academies, including from Ben and John. I can't go into the detail of the individual academy issues which were being raised in the postings, but just to say, when I made my statement to the House of Commons back in July, I said clearly that academies play an important role in our education policy, in tackling disadvantage and turning around schools which have been falling well below average in terms of their performance. But that it's important that they're part of our mainstream approach to education. All academy proposals now are drawn up in consultation with the local authority. All new academies follow the core elements of the national curriculum. They have a duty to collaborate with other schools in their area. They're inspected by Ofsted. They have to follow the admissions code. In fact, if you look at the evidence, academies tend to have a higher proportion of children from low-income families than the average and from their areas. And also, they've had in the last few years faster rises in results than the average across the country. So I think academies are working, and they're working within the mainstream of our education policy, and that's where I want them to be. I've also abolished the requirement that universities and other high-performing public sector institutions have to put £2 million up before they can sponsor an academy. I want universities to be getting involved in academies around the country, and that's what we're seeing happening at the moment. Lee says crumbling Victorian buildings have vanished and adjacent schools merged into brand new buildings, which is a vast improvement. When I attended the local primary school, I was often beside a bucket listening to the plink plink of raindrops falling in. I know what he means. I can remember that as well. In fact, I can also remember, it shows my age, being at school in the early 1970s when Ted Heath was the Conservative Prime Minister, when we had to come to school in 2 jumpers and a coat because the strikes at that time meant that there was no heating and no electricity. So things have changed. 10 years ago, we inherited a really difficult situation in terms of school buildings. Since then, over 1,000 new schools refurbished or rebuilt. We're actually expanding the amount of money we're putting in over the next 3 years, £21 billion, and that's on top of us spending more in the last 5 years than all of the last 25 years put together. Our aim is every secondary school rebuilt or completely refurbished, half of all primary schools as well, investing in the future of our education. Paul says in a posting that our education system should be world class rather than average, and I think he's right about that. And we have moved in the last 10 years as standards have gone up from being below average, where we've been stuck for a long time, to being above average, but we're not yet world class. And I said that on the Today programme about 10 days ago. It was criticised in some quarters, but frankly it's true. There's more to be done to get to world class. There's still 20% of our young people who aren't making the grade at 11 when they're leaving primary school, and we've got to do something about that. And as Rebecca says, the right way to do it, and that's actually what my department is about, is looking at the needs of every child and making sure that we treat children as individuals, look at their needs. That's why in 500 schools around the country we're actually doing individual tracking of pupils' progress, and when and if they're falling behind, intervening with special extra personal help, including after school or out of lesson tuition to help them catch up. There's no reason why one-to-one tuition should be only for kids in private schools. It should be for every young person who needs it. And that's what we are trying to do by that greater focus on personalisation and catch-up. But I disagree with Rebecca when she says we should get rid of the SATs tests. I think parents and schools, as well as my department, need that information. Where I completely disagree is with the Tories' proposal. They say, and there's an email from Marie, who is pretty critical about this proposal. She says that the Tory idea that if pupils aren't making the grade at 11, they should be kept back in primary school for an extra year and made to do that year again. She says that would stigmatise kids. She says it would be impractical. Absolutely right. In fact, that proposal was roundly rejected by all the teaching experts on the day David Cameron made it. It's too late to intervene at 11, holding young people back in primary school. What you've got to do is intervene much earlier, and that's what we're trying to do with our Every Child a Reader, our Every Child Counts programme, to actually intervene at 5, 6 and 7 when young people are falling behind, give them a more personalised approach to learning. It's also the case, and Martin, Colin and Alison all posted to say, you've got to let teachers get on and teach in the classroom, and that means tackling poor behaviour, bad discipline, which can really undermine teachers' ability to get on and do the job. And parents have got a responsibility to work with schools to tackle issues around bullying, truancy, behaviour. We've given teachers new powers to tackle low-level discipline in the classroom, and what I want is government and parents to back teachers in using those powers to make sure that we stamp out ill discipline and let kids get on and learn. That's what most young people want. The fact is it's a minority, a small minority, who often can mess things up for everybody else. David, Marie, Louise, Joanne all say stop demonising young people. I couldn't agree with that more. The vast majority of young people work hard, volunteer in the community, are good citizens, are ambitious and will do well for the future. There's a small minority who get into trouble with the law. We should be tough about that, but we should also be intervening earlier to try and stop those kind of problems developing, and that's what we as a department will also be about, early intervention to tackle the causes of crime. That's partly about supporting families. It's also about making sure that young people have got better things to do after school and at the weekend rather than just hanging about. And one of the things which we are trying to do now as a department with our 10-year youth plan and also our proposals on extended schools is make sure that there's proper things for young people to do, invest in services, things which they can be consulted on themselves and engage and actually run sometimes, to make sure that there's decent things to be done. Most people in my constituency, if I say to them, young or old, what do you want? They say, make the streets safe, get lights in the park, more police in the streets, but they'll also say, and decent things for young people to do, and that's what this department's about. It's also about keeping kids motivated in education. Robert says more vocational more vocational and or practical courses could help those that are less academic being turned away from learning. And he's right about that. Our new diplomas programme for 14 to 19-year-olds will be both excellent academically but also have a strong vocational element to it as well. And I want that to have the same status as A-levels and other academic courses, to give you a full-rounded qualification, but also to keep people motivated and learning about things which will help them for the future. And we're taking forward that programme at the moment. Our legislation to raise the education leaving age to 18 is very important, but we've also got to make sure that the content of learning up to 18 works for young people. Just a couple more postings. Julia says we need to do more to tackle violent content in video games, and that is a big concern for parents. When we were in Bristol 10 days ago, parents were raising their concerns about the internet. We need young people to be able to take advantage of the great opportunities the internet brings, but we've also got to make sure that they can do so in a way which is safe, and striking that balance is very important. I've asked Dr. Tanya Byron, who's an expert on these issues, to work with us, with James Spinell at the Culture Department, to look at how we can empower parents to make sure the children are safe as our kids take advantage of the new technologies and the internet. Finally, Paul says we should have more grammar schools. I have to say that that was rather a minority view amongst all the different comments and postings we had. I have to say I don't agree with you, Paul. I think that we've put the divisive days of the old 11 plus behind us. There's a very small number of grammar schools left, and it's for local parents to decide whether to carry on. But I think if you want a world-class education for all, then we should be doing so by focusing on the needs of every child and not just the few. In fact, David Willits, when he was the Conservative education spokesman, actually agreed with that earlier in the year. He made a speech in which he said that academic selection entrenches advantage. It doesn't spread it. And for a short period of time, it looked like his Conservative leader, David Cameron, was supporting him. Unfortunately, David Cameron then changed his mind, decided he was in favour of more grammar schools, and sacked David Willits. The Conservatives may be in favour of selection for a few. We're in favour of excellence for all, and that's the approach I'm going to take forward in this job, in this new department. That's all we've got time for. I hope you think we've got through quite a few, but I'm afraid not all. If people want to email me further comments, you can do so by emailing ed@edballs.com to give me your views. And if you'd like to contribute to our consultation on the children's plan, you can do so by logging on to our departmental website. And let me give you the website address. It's www.dcsf.gov.uk/time to talk. And if you log on there, you can fill in the questions and give us your views. I hope that you found this helpful. We've addressed a number of the important issues which people have raised. If you're going down to Bournemouth in the next few days for conference, I'll see you there. And if not, then I look forward to having a chance to talk to you again soon on YouTube Labour Vision. Thanks very much.